Hey Bookaholics, so welcome back to another video. Today I am bringing you my July wrap-up. July was quite a busy month at the beginning of the month, and then in typical summer fashion I have been hibernating because I get summer depression and I get really hot in summer because I'm in southern Spain, so I don't do an awful lot in summer. I avoid existing as much as possible, so lots of reading been done, so let's get into the books. The first thing that I will say is that a couple of the goals that I had set myself for over the summer was to continue both Malazan and the Cosmere, and in July I did not actually do that. So both Memories of Ice by Stephen Erickson, which is the third Malazan book, and Words of Radiance Part 1, which is the first half of the second Stormlight Archive book, are both rolling over into August. So the ones that I mentioned in my August TBR are not going to be the ones I read in August. It will hopefully be these, and then the other two would roll over into September or whatever. So I do have plans for Memory of Ice, so that one will almost certainly get read. I don't know if I'm going to pause Cosmere for a bit, depending on if I don't have time in August, but these did not sadly get read in July. However, getting into what I did read, I have a couple of 2 stars, I have a DNF, I have some 4 stars, I have a huge array of ratings. I have 1 5-star this month, so not necessarily the best when it comes to ratings, but it was an interesting month and it was quite a varied month. First off, I'll start with my book club picks. My series read along for throughout May through to September is the Soldier Sun series by Robin Hobb. This is Robin Hobb's only work that is not part of the Realm of the Eldlings. Realm of the Eldlings being one of my favorite series out there, and this one I am DNFing for the second time. I really didn't get on with it still. I got to exactly the same part in Forest Mage as I got last time, and I just noped out. I don't care about our protagonist. I don't care enough to actually truly become invested in this story. I've been reading everyone else's comments on the Discord, and even the people that are enjoying it, the stuff that they are saying is convincing me that I have definitely made the right choice in DNFing this. So Robin Hobb for me is going to stay as the author of one of my favorite series, which is Realm of the Eldlings, but definitely is not favorite author status, given that I really cannot get through this series. Next up, the other book club pick for July was Some Desperate Glory. This is for my sci-fi book club that I have, and this one is a standalone. It is a quite thematically heavy, quite discussion heavy story that is centering on once humans are part of a larger community of interspecies, intergalactic society. After the destruction of Earth, we are following the displaced humans on a ship who are trying to get revenge and also remain in control, and it is just how humans continue to be humans even in space, basically. I do have a spoiler vlog for this. I do spoiler vlog all of the sci-fi books, so if you are interested in this, then I would recommend reading it, and then you can join me. I do my spoiler vlogs where I do it by section, so you can either read along with me or you can just read the book and then come watch it later if it is something that you would be interested in reading. I had an interesting time with this one. This is a very discussion heavy book. Actually, it's one that I do find very topical. I think it was a great one to pick as a book club pick because it did mean that there was a lot for discussion in this one, and that's what I want out of my sci-fi book club. While I really like discussing like world building and characters and stuff in the fantasy ones, I really like discussing like themes and the actual discussion the book is trying to have with us in terms of our humanity, and I think that Some Desperate Glory did a good job of that. Whether or not it will work for everyone, because the characters are a little bit more distant, I suppose, than you would normally get in fantasy, for example, I thought that the discussion side of it made it very entertaining regardless, and I ended up giving this one 4 stars. The very first book that I read this month, and the only one that I've given 5 stars to, was actually the one that I read while I was still in the UK in my Warwickshire vlog. Warwickshire is the home to William Shakespeare, and as I went to go visit his hometown of Stratford-upon-Avon while I was in Warwickshire, I decided that I needed to read a Shakespeare retelling, so I picked up Fair Rosaline by Natasha Solomons. This was a fantastic book, as is emphasized by the fact that I gave it 5 stars. I absolutely loved reading this. This was basically Romeo and Juliet, but from the perspective of Rosaline. For those of you who don't know, the reason that Romeo broke into the Capulet Ball to eventually meet Juliet is originally breaking in because he wanted to see Rosaline, which is Juliet's cousin. So this is told from the perspective of Rosaline, the person who survives the play. But equally interestingly, the author has decided that since Romeo's age is never actually stated while Juliet's is, what if, as was quite common during this time period, Romeo was an adult man as opposed to a teenage boy? So it kind of poses the idea of male manipulation and the fickleness of Romeo's love, and it shows him in a much more predatory light than we would normally get from the Shakespeare story, where there are 2 teenagers who foolishly think that death is a better option than to live. And I really did like the way that Natasha Solomon told this story. And while it's not one that I necessarily agree with, it's not an assessment that I look at and think, yes, Romeo is almost certainly a grown man. I have always read him as a teenaged boy. There is nothing on the page that would refute what Natasha Solomons is saying. So it's not really a character assassination, it's just a reinterpretation of the story. It's still taking the exact same Romeo that you see, but what if it was slightly different angle? And I really appreciate books that do that, because I don't necessarily have to be like, yeah, that's definitely how I read it, to be able to understand where the retelling is coming from. And I think it did a really interesting job. It did a really good commentary. I loved Rosaline as a character. I thought that she was fantastic. And one of my favorite things about this is that you actually side with Tybalt, which if you've read Romeo and Juliet, for a book to make you think fuck Romeo, yay Tybalt, that's impressive. So I had a fantastic time with this. I loved it. And if you're a Shakespeare fan, I would recommend checking this one out. I have a couple that I can't really talk about too at length because they are for projects, which you will see at some point. But I did read This Will Be Fun by E.B. Asher. This is one that I had an odd time with. I, again, can't talk about it really, so you're gonna have to wait until those projects are released. I might at the end of the year do a just wrap up of all of my projects that throughout the year I have said I haven't been able to talk about. I know I've had a lot of projects going on this year, and there's been a lot of times in my wrap-ups where I've said, oh, I can't talk about this. So I think I will do a wrap-up of my projects in case you don't want to watch spoiler vlogs or really long vlogs. This one, odd experience. I won't say whether that's a good thing or not. Another one that I also can't talk about is Tales of the Monstrous Heart by Jennifer Delaney. This is a gothic story, and it is a fae story. So gothic, fae, and dark academia all in one. And I am desperate to talk to you guys about this one, for better or for worse. So again, I will chuck all of my I'm sorry I can't talk about these in a wrap-up books in a wrap-up at the end of the year if you'd like. If you don't normally watch vlogs, especially spoiler vlogs, been doing a lot of those this year. If you don't really watch a lot of spoiler vlogs, let me know if you would like me to wrap up all of these books I have been saying I can't talk about at the end of the year once all of the projects are out, and it's not going to interfere with whether or not people would be interested in my thoughts anymore because the projects are already out. A standalone that I did read was Shoestring Theory by Mariana Costa. I was super excited for this. I thought it'd be like a light, fun read. This is a time travel story in which we are following a man who is in like the far future, and then his cat dies. So then he goes back in time because he's just done with his awful existence in this post-apocalyptic world. So he goes back in time where he needs to stop the love of his life and his husband from becoming the person that destroys the world. His husband has also gone back in time to pretty much the same moment. So they're kind of just then reliving their lives, but slightly differently. I love the concept of it, but time travel does not work for me. In this one's case, I don't understand why we needed to time travel. Like, it literally could have just been a prophecy. You literally could have just had one of those like visions of like seeing how your life unfolds and being like, no, screw that and change course, because the time travel element didn't matter, but it did have a butterfly effect. So that annoyed me a little bit. And also, sadly, I just didn't connect to the characters. I was desperate to love these characters. It's a romance. You're supposed to be in love with the characters. I'm supposed to buy into the fact that these two are still in love with each other after everything that has happened, and that they can still see each other with affection. And it just didn't work for me, and it's so sad because I really did want to love this. this. So this one ended up being another 2-star read, so that's not ideal. It's not one that I would deter people from, because I think if you connect with the characters, this book can do a lot. Like, it's an interesting book. I paused reading it halfway and I was still curious enough to come back. I just didn't have any emotional investment in the story. Like, it wasn't enough for me to feel like, oh, I want to DNF this, but I didn't have enough emotional investment in it to be like, yes, this is amazing. So yeah, it's kind of just a sad one, really. So I would recommend checking it out if it sounds interesting to you, because again, I think if you connect to the characters, which is something that I think is very individual, I don't think that is that the characters were poorly written. They were just ones that I couldn't seem to find myself caring about, which was a shame. So I would still recommend, weirdly enough, which is an odd thing to say for a 2-star read, but it had really interesting concepts, so it might still work for you. Before we get into the series that I read, I did also start a series, which is I read the first book in the Books of Earthsea by Ursula K. Le Guin. So this is a bind up of all of the books. I only read the first one, which is A Wizard of Earthsea. I'm not going to hold this up because this is heavy, so I'll probably put a picture here. But I desperately wanted to love this book. This has been a horrible month for Robin Hobb, because the reason, so me and my husband are buddy reading Books of Earthsea, and the reason that we picked it up is because Robin Hobb has cited it as her primary source of inspiration for writing Realm of the Eldlings, which, as I have said, is my favorite series. It's an odd one because I can see the inspiration. I can genuinely see where Robin Hobb has gotten her inspiration from. I guess to an extent I can understand why people love this as a classic, why people see this book and think, yes, this is one of the best books. I guess if there was nothing else like it when it came out, I understand why it was appealing, I suppose. I didn't like it. I really didn't. I had to force myself to read this book, and I am devastated because I want to look at Ursula K. Le Guin like a god. I love Ursula K. Le Guin. Every single interview I have read of that woman, I saw her writing schedule. I love that. She seems like such an incredible human. She seems like she did so much in the way of contributing to the fantasy genre and the sci-fi genre. She is a queen in every genre that I love. I want to love this woman. But with this book, the problem is that it's very short. My problem with this is that I do not care in the slightest about Ged. This book would have been better in first person. Not gonna lie. This whole book is, we watch Ged when he's a little boy who figures out that he has some powers, and then he goes to work with this wizard, and then the wizard has like a very specific teaching style, master and apprentice thing going on, and the kid's like, no, I don't like this style. So then the master's like, well, okay, I'll send you to this school instead, because there'll be different masters that'll be able to teach you in different ways. Kid goes to this school, and then a lot of the people with magic that can go to the school happen to be people from like the upper classes, or at least slightly wealthier families or better islands, because it's an archipelago, it's like the richer islands or whatever. So Ged kind of starts getting, he garners himself a nemesis from one of the richer kids who like is quite snide about mocking him, and then in turn Ged is very like proud and kind of takes it very seriously and all of that. So there's like a lot of tension between these two, to the point where Ged then decides at one point that he wants to prove that he's all that, and he ends up summoning this like shadow demon thing by accident, and then this thing is going to potentially kill him. So then suddenly he like grows up from this experience, becomes a mage, and then it's how he goes about helping people in this archipelago, all while trying to find this shadow so that he can defeat it, which you'd think is quite an interesting premise. But the problem is they all happen super quickly. You're with Ged in his hometown for a chapter, maybe two. It's 10 chapters long. Then we are with Ged with the old man for a chapter, I think. Then we go to this school, and we're in this school. So we have Ged when he's young in a chapter, and then Ged when he's older in another chapter. Then we have Ged when he leaves the school and he goes to this town. Every single part of this kid's growing up, his life, his changes, him trying to find this shadow that he can then defeat, all of these things are happening within a chapter. So you are not actually settling with anything. You don't get to know the school, the people in the school with any measure of depth that actually makes me feel connected. We don't get to know the people in the village that he is around, that he then wants to protect. We don't really get to know anyone or anywhere. We're just hopping around island to island. But the problem is that because it's third person and it's not omniscient, it's third person limited, we literally get just the only time we get any thoughts or feelings from Ged are when he's reacting to something, which means he needs to be around people or around things that are doing something for us to get a reaction from Ged, which means that we don't really get to know Ged either. I do not feel like I actually know Ged, who is the only character that we have spent more than 2 chapters with throughout this book. So it gets a bit exhausting just hopping from island to island, attempting to care about this boy I don't know anything about. And yeah, it's a shame. I mean, I will continue. I'll read the next one. I appreciate that this was her first attempt in this world and that she was mostly interested in the world. She created the world first, I believe. So she just clearly wanted to flip from island to island. And now that Ged's a bit older, I think that maybe in the next book he'll be a little bit more interesting, maybe. But geez, I did not have a good time with this, and I am devastated because I was expecting Angela Kayla Gwyn to be like a god for me. So we'll see how I fare with the next book. I am still buddy reading it with my husband. I think we'll give it the next book, and then if we still struggle with it, we'll probably stop. But yeah, a time. What a time. And then the only last thing that I have to talk about is that I read a series. I read the Dangerous Damsels series by India Holton, which consists of the Wisteria Society of Lady Scoundrels, the League of Gentlewomen Witches, and the Secret Service of Tea and Treason. The first book, the Wisteria Society for Lady Scoundrels, is about land pirates. So basically you have pirates that have these skills that means that they can move houses around, which basically means that they steer their houses like ships. So they go steal houses, they go steal from places, and then we are following a story in which one of our protagonists is the heir to this society, essentially, like to leading this society. And she has multiple hits out on her, like multiple people that are wanting to kill her for different reasons. And one of the paid assassins, who she ends up actually more falling in love with than anything else. It's a fun, quick romance. It's a Regency / Victorian, well, it's actually Victorian style story. It's actually later Victorian as well, because by this point Albert's dead. But yeah, I had such a good time with this. Absolutely bonkers. Just watching people be land pirates and trying to steal houses, and it was very entertaining. It's absolutely wacky, and that was exactly what I needed when I read it. The sequel, which is the League of Gentlewomen Witches, is another one that I had so much fun with. Both of these are 4 stars. I really did like the way that this romance came about. This one is, in this world, we also have a society of witches. So we have the Wisteria Society, which is the women pirates, and then we have the Gentlewomen Witches, who are the Witches Society. But witches don't exist. We don't talk about the witches. And in this one, a magical pendant that belongs to the witches has been stolen, and now everyone wants this pendant. So we have a pirate who was featured in the first book named Alex, who is searching for the pendant, as is one of the witches. But no one really knows who's kidnapped who out of the two. They're both steering in the same direction, and either she has been kidnapped and taken onto his house, or she has commandeered his house. Depending on who you ask, it's, you know, who is actually in charge, when in reality they're just finding an excuse to be around each other for a little bit longer. I did really enjoy this. I mean, the comps in here are perfect. This first one is Bridgerton meet Peaky Blinders, which I totally get. And then in this one, it's Princess Bride meets Jane Austen. This one actually had so many Jane Austen quotes as well, or like even misquotes as well. The second chapter starts with, "It is a truth seldom acknowledged that a single woman in possession of the good fortune is not especially in want of a husband." Perfect. Love it. Best use of that quote I have seen to date. And the last one is, I would say it's a Regency James Bond, basically. This one's an espionage one. In it, we are following 2 spies. Alice, who is one of the Queen's spies, assigned with Daniel Bixby on a mission. They don't normally get along, but they're going to have to pretend that they are married while they infiltrate these societies to protect the throne from an assassination attempt. It's not that I disliked this one, it just wasn't as good. I mean, the spy stories are not really my thing. So there's an awful lot of like the typical like James Bondiness going on in here, but in a Victorian fashion. So if that sounds fun to you, I genuinely think this is a fantastic interpretation of it. I still gave it 3 stars. I did really enjoy the way that it played with the genres. I just didn't care as much about this story as I did about the first 2, which I gave 4 stars. And also the thing is, I really liked Bixby when he was in the previous book, so, and Alice as well actually in the previous book, and then actually getting more of them I liked them less, which was weird. So while it was still a really fun time and I'm really glad that I read it, it wasn't quite as good as the other 2, but again, that's more just a personal preference of the genre mashups than anything else. So there you have it. Those are all of the things that I have read in July, or not read in the case of Stormlight and Malazan, or DNF in the case of Robin Hobb. But a lot of reading has been done. A lot of reading will hopefully continue into August. And yeah, what was the best thing that you read in July? For me, it's obviously Fair Rosaline. It's the only 5 stars I had. So yeah, let me know what your best read for July was. And that is all from me for today. So thank you ever so much for watching, and I will hopefully catch you in another one soon. Bye.